Hello and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. And it's Monday, so I'm coming to you from my house. This week, I thought we're jumping to a more complicated subject this week. I am trying to do both complicated and easy things for this channel. I've been bouncing around a little bit on all different stuff. This week, it's a little more complicated. I'd like to talk about when you are ready to put your sleeves from a sweater onto needles and knit them, the idea of doing them both at the same time. This might sound a little daunting. I have not yet made a video for doing them one at a time, just getting your sleeves onto a needle and what to do with this part right here. So I may back up at some point and do one for just a single sleeve. We're jumping a little over that to setting up 2 at a time on 2 circular needles. So if this is your first time doing it and what we are doing seems a little complex, hang on. Either jump in and give it a try, or hang on and know that I will be doing a video at some point. I can't promise next week, but at some point I'll be doing a video that talks about just a single sleeve. Right now we're going to talk about 2 sleeves and how they look the same and how we have to do, it's a little bit of a jumpy flippy thing, but it's super awesome once you get going. This sweater that I just recently finished, that was on chunky yarn, so it went really fast. I did the sleeves 2 at a time. It's great when you have like a single strand of yarn. It can be a little more complicated if you're holding things double. It can be a little more complicated if you're using a hand dye, because personally, I like to alternate skeins when I'm doing a hand dye. So often that type of sweater, I'll do the sleeves 1 at a time. If it's a solid yarn like this, and you don't have to worry about color changing or inconsistent dye lots, things like that, it can be really great to do them both at the same time. And the benefits of that, some people do socks 2 at a time. The benefits of that can be that the shaping happens at just the same place. You're not worried about one sleeve coming out longer or shorter than another. They end at the same time. They become the same length because you're doing the rows at the same time. Now, there are some things to keep track of when that happens. That's what we're going to talk through, and I'm going to go through in drawings, and then I'm going to do. You're not going to see the finished product today. It's just getting them off these stitch holders, the knitting barber cords that are super cool, getting them off of them onto 2 circular needles. The 2 circular needles is also a really great way to do what we call small circumference knitting. When your sleeves get small enough that they don't fit on 1 circular needle if you're doing them 1 at a time. And then today we're going to make the jump to 2 at a time. Doing socks 2 at a time, you often don't have to worry about where you start and end with them. You set them up and they're good to go. For sweaters, we have the extra leap of they're already attached to something. So how do we do it to make sure that things are coming out uniform and not backwards? So let's get to it. So this video is about 2 at a time sleeves on 2 circular needles. So there's a lot of 2s going on in this. So let's talk through some basics of each aspect of it. I was mentioning in the introduction, doing 2 at a time, some of the benefits of this. Your shaping happens at the same time. Your length is going to be identical. You don't have to worry so much about one sleeve coming out longer than the other. When you're done with them both, they're both done, if that makes sense. It's not you finish one and go, oh my gosh, I have to make 1 more sleeve. It may feel like it's taking longer, but I mean, it's probably taking about the same amount of time. But when you're done, you are done. You don't have to start a second sleeve when you finish the first. So they're both done at the same time. One thing to note is that you will need 2 separate skeins of yarn to do this. If you only have 1 skein left and it can last for the whole thing, you have to split them apart, or you just have to have 2 separate skeins of yarn. This won't work with going 1 at a time. That will make more sense when we actually do it in person, I believe. So the deal with 2 circular needles as a method of small circumference knitting, and I have videos specifically on only getting the hang of knitting on 2 circulars for small circumference knitting already up on the channel. So we're not going to overwork that part of it. But the basics of what's happening when you're doing 2 circular needles, you're going to divide the stitches in half of your whole circumference, 1/2, 1/2. Each circular that you're using gets half of the stitches, gets one part of what you just divided. And the trick to making 2 circular needles work is you are always knitting with both ends of the same circular. The other one just acts as a stitch holder. You forget about that half with the current half that you are knitting. If that makes no sense, hang on to it. We'll get there. Here is the deal combining those 2 concepts. So 2 at a time sleeves on 2 circulars, some things that you have to keep in mind. The same half of each sleeve is on 1 circular. So you have half of each sleeve on 1 circular. Again, if that doesn't make sense yet, hang on and bear with me. We'll get there. When you transfer your stitches off of the stitch holder, there's 2 ways to do it. Depending on the type of stitch holder you have. Because no matter what, with most of these sleeves, you need to both get the stitches off of your stitch holder, and you have to pick up underarm stitches. There is the top that is holding stitches, and then there is the underarm that often when you separate for sleeves, there's 2 parts. There is what's on the stitch holder, and there's the gap that was crossed when you separated the sleeves. And all of that has to transition onto 2 circulars over 2 sleeves. So I wrote here, you can transfer the stitches off of your stitch holder to the needles, then pick up the stitches across your armhole, or you can do it all at once. It really depends on your type of stitch holder. The type of stitch holder that I am using today, I'm going to want to transfer my stitches onto the needles first, and then deal with the issue of the underarm. There are other ways to do it, but for me, this works to tackle one thing at a time. We have needle 1 and needle 2, and I'm going to recommend going in the same direction for both of them. We're going to not think about the front of your sweater and the back of your sweater. We are only going to think about looking at the sleeve hole itself to figure this out. Needle 1 is going to go from the armpit, from the bottom of your sleeve, whichever one you pick first. Just keep them as 1 and 2. It's going to go from the bottom of your sleeve or the armpit to the shoulder on sleeve 1, and then go over and do it on sleeve 2. I am going to say, thinking about it as looking down on it, that is going to be the left side of both sleeves. That is not going to be front or back. It's going to be different depending on the sleeve. This is where it can get a little bit crazy. Let's already pick what sleeve 1 and sleeve 2, let's pick colors for them. Let's make sleeve 1 is going to be green, and sleeve 2 is going to be purple. And these are brand new markers. So believe it or not, when they're brand new, they're actually a little light. Let me see if this will work better. Let's make it a brighter green there. Yes. Okay. One thing about drawing this out and working it out with y'all is it's helping me know what's going on too. Needle 1, I just said, should go armpit to shoulder on sleeve 1 and then repeat for sleeve 2. And I've color-coded these, right? That's the left side of them. Needle 2 should go shoulder to armpit, but we're going to go the opposite direction. You're going to start with sleeve 2, and then you're going to repeat it for sleeve 1 to keep things consistent. We're going to show you that with colors over on the other side. I had to jump back. I know colors may look weird over there. I had to jump back and refilm this because it's going to make more sense. The side of the sleeve for both of these that needle 2 is going on is the right side. As I run out of room to write that, it's on the right side. Needle 1 ends up with the left side of both sleeves. Needle 2 ends up with the right side. So let's take a look at some pictures that I've drawn and color code them and see if this helps. I'm having a few challenges here because I am filming really late in the day, and sunlight, which is usually my friend, is making some light and dark patches on my filming station. So bear with me. Okay, we'll fix some of this in the editing process. So let's take a look. Let's pretend this is my sleeve opening. We have the extra stitches you cast on when you separated your sleeve. And we have the stitches that are currently on a stitch holder. I've left them as open stitches right now just to talk about what needle goes where. So up here, we have the stitches that are on the stitch holder. I color coded the sleeves down below. Now we also want to color code the needles because this is a generic sleeve. It's not sleeve 1 or sleeve 2. We will deal with that in a second. But I do want us to color code the needles. So let's have orange be needle 1 and blue is going to be needle 2. Like I said, start at the armhole. For just transitioning stitches on, we're going to start at the armhole, starting with needle 1, and we're going to go all the way up through these stitches to the top. Then we will repeat that for the second sleeve. So hang on to that. We start at the bottom and we go up. And count your number of stitches to start. I believe I drew out 14. So 7 of them, divide it in half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are going on needle 1. Needle 2, when it's needle 2's turn, you're going to start where you left off with needle 1. You're going to start here and you're going to go down from the shoulder to the armpit. I'm taking a second to switch where I'm labeling things to try to clarify a little bit more. So needle 1 and needle 2. And the other things I want to label on here, this is the armpit and up here is the shoulder. Okay, so again, to review, needle 1 is going to start down at the bottom of the armpit and go up to the shoulder. And needle 2, when it's needle 2's turn, starts at the shoulder and goes back down. After all of the placement is set up, you will have the opportunity to pick up stitches along here on needle 1 and pick up stitches along here with needle 2. But we're going to do one thing at a time. So let's move on to this picture over here. That was for one sleeve. When you're doing 2 at a time, you need to do all of needle 1 at once and then do all of needle 2 at once, which means you need to do both sleeves. Here's what my sweater looks like if I'm looking at it from the front. Now, we need to think about these sleeves as being independent of front or back in terms of what we do with needle 1 and needle 2, because we are not going to be picking up the front sides of both sleeves. That will get us messed up. That will get it so it all gets twisty-turny and doesn't work. I recommend starting, so all of needle 1 at once, I recommend starting at the right side if you're looking at it from the front, the far right side of your sweater. I'm going to readjust this just a bit. Let me rework how we think of this. If this is the front of the sweater, imagine, usually they talk about the right and left sleeves. It usually is though as you're wearing it, so not to be confusing at all. If you were in this sweater and facing the camera right now, this would be your left sleeve and this would be your right, as if it was being worn. So from all of needle 1 at once, we want to start with your left sleeve and go to your right. And then when you go to needle 2, you're going to do all of needle 2 at once, but you're going to go in the reverse direction. Start with right, then do the left. So let's see what this looks like. Again, imagine you are looking straight at each sleeve. Now we have to think about right and left sides of each sleeve. But first, let's color code our sleeves. Because we used green and purple over on the other side, sleeve 1, I want it to be the one that's on the left. Sleeve 1 is green, and sleeve 2 is purple. In fact, let's just redraw them, those colors. How about that? Sleeve 1 is green. Sleeve 2 is purple. So now to bring in the colors of needle 1 and needle 2, we want to start with the left sleeve That's our green sleeve. And then do our right sleeve, which is our purple sleeve. But for both of them, we want to go from the armpit up to the shoulder. It will be the left side of that particular sleeve if we're looking straight on at it. So we want to start here, and we're going to pick up the stitches off of the stitch holder from the armpit up to the shoulder, but then we actually have to come back over here and pick up the stitches from the armpit to the shoulder over here. Looks crazy. We'll help you understand it when we hit the real knitting. Then with needle 2, we're going to do the whole thing at once. We're going to start with the right sleeve, which is purple, and then move to the left sleeve, which is green. And needle 2 is blue, so here we go. We're going to start here. Go down the other side towards the armpit of your right sleeve, then come on over and hit from the shoulder down the stitches on your left sleeve, on the green one. That may look super crazy, but roll with me on it. We're gonna make it work. So my sweater erased half the words there, but here's what it looks like once you've knit a bunch. I've tried to make the sleeves longer, like we've actually done some work on them to help show what is going on. The first thing I want to do, I want to color code what's happening here. Let's talk through the words I wrote here and then let me color code. So once it's set up, one sleeve is going to feel twisted. It won't feel like they're both laying out flat, not like this. One will feel twisted so that we're knitting them both in the same direction, twisted or folded. As we're doing it, let me bring it in here. So this is our green one. Let me say that this is the underarm of our green sleeve that is on the needles here. That one might feel okay. The other sleeve, our purple one, the underarm's not going to come straight out. It's going to feel like it's twisted around closer to the neck. It won't be attached to the neck or anything. It's just going to feel twisted. But what that means is that these needles, one needle you're knitting up from the arm, from the bottoms, and up from the bottom, and then down from the top and down from the top. And I've written in the notes here, you're going to knit all the way across one needle. So you can do half of your green sleeve and then half of your purple sleeve, because these are the two halves doing that crazy flippy floppy thing that I just did. These are the two halves that are going to be on your orange needle. This is your orange needle right here. So you're going to knit half of the green sleeve and then half of the purple sleeve. The other half is on the blue needle. And I drew it with space in between, but they're really going to feel like they're sandwiched at the edges because it will still be a circle. This is not going to lead to big splits in your yarn if everything goes well. But you're going to knit up, and then you're going to knit down, and then up, and down, and that's how you keeping your sleeves at the same pace, at the same spot. The last note I wrote down here is to remember to switch yarn balls when you're moving from one sleeve to the other. So we could even color code the yarn balls. Even though you're probably not knitting 2 different color sleeves, you could. It could be fun. It would help you keep track of what is going on. You knit across one needle, but you need to knit with one ball, our green ball, and then start knitting with our purple ball here. And then keep going with the purple ball, let it be, and knit back down with the green. And keep knitting with the green, and knit with the purple, knit with the purple, and knit with the green. That's where I'm hoping colors will help us understand this. Let's see what it looks like with real yarn. So here is my sweater top, and my 2 sleeves are on my barber cord stitch holders. We're going to have some sunlight playing on here. Hopefully it won't mess us up too much. I have my instructions if I need them. Other things I need, I'm knitting on size 7 needles. I have 1 and I have 2. You may notice these are different length needles. That's fine, as long as they're both long enough. One of them super long and one of them not so much so. That's okay. They don't need to be the same length. In fact, if anything, having them different lengths helps you know what the start and end is, which one's needle 1 and which one's needle 2. The other thing for us is needle 1 is going to be going up from the armpits and needle 2 is going down from the shoulders. So armpit, shoulder, armpit, shoulder. But both of these I want to examine looking straight on and looking straight on when I come to them. Now, every sleeve has the stitch holder part that I mentioned and the added stitch part down here. We're going to ignore this for a second and just get the live stitches of both sweater arms onto these needles. And as I mentioned, eventually we're going to need 2 balls of yarn. This sweater that I made changes color at the sleeve separation and when you pick up the sleeve. So if you're saying, wait, that's a different color yarn than the top of the sweater, that's okay. I'm going to keep them up here for right now. Okay, I'm going to take my really long needle and get my other needle out of here. I'm going to take one side in my right hand, and I have these on my barber cords, so I'm going to need to undo both of these. I'm going to undo them both at the same time just to have them ready. And then just like my drawing, I'm going to start with this sleeve over here and then do this sleeve. And looking at them individually, when I look at them like this, straight on, I'm going to be going up the front side of this sleeve, but not the front side of this one because I'm going to look at them independently. So if I open this up and I see all these stitches on the stitch holder and I have a clear cast on edge down here, that's my armpit. This is my shoulder. I know a shoulder is probably way up there, but this is the shoulder edge. So I want to start on the left side of this sleeve. And I want to get half the stitches onto this needle. Let me count them real quick. See how many we have. I count 88 stitches, and don't worry, I sped that up so you don't have to watch me slowly count 88 stitches, which means I want 44 to go on this needle. So I'm going to cinch up the stitches on this barber cord. Keep cinching, keep cinching. And I'm going to slide 44 onto my needle. If you're slipping these off of a stitch holder that has an end kind of like a needle, you can count as you go. Or I'm going to make a guess, and then I'm going to count what's on here. "44 is right here. So I'm going to take this barber cord off of my needle because I'm not done with this needle. I'm going to pull it so that I'm not losing my stitches. I've gone from the armpit up to the shoulder on one sleeve. I'm going to pull it through, pull my circular needle through, and head over to this sleeve. Now this sleeve, again, independent. Don't think I did the front of this, now I have to do the front of this. Think about them independently. If we look at it the same way we just looked at the last sleeve, here is the cast on edge, the armpit. Up here is the shoulder. We want to start down at the armpit and go up the same side as we did on the other one, which is the left side, which is over here. So I want to get this end of this barber cord firmly on my needle and start sliding the stitches along my barber cord so they're ready to go. And I'm going to start sliding them onto the same tip of the needle in the same direction that I did the other side. And when I think I'm getting close, I'll count. That was a good guess. Here's 44. I'm going to get my barber cord off and I'm going to pull it so stitches don't fall off of it. But now I've got the left side of this sleeve and then the left side of this sleeve. This is where it's starting to look a little funky crazy, but just think about, we stopped up at the shoulder of this sleeve. That's where we want to start with our next needle. So I'm going to actually turn this around. This is where we stopped. I'm going to grab my other needle, that same end of the barber cord, but this is my needle 2 right now, and get it on to the tip of this needle to the barber cord, get them attached. And this time I don't necessarily have to count. I just want to slide all the remaining stitches from this sleeve onto my second needle. And I'm trying not to yank too hard on this. I don't want to break the connection there. Just want to gently slide, gently slide. And now now this barber cord is free from that second sleeve. I have needle 1, needle 2. Now needle 2 needs to come over to the top, not the bottom. This is the underarm. We need to start up at the shoulder of sleeve 1. So I just attached it to the shoulder part of sleeve 1. So now I can slide this needle down. Lots of numbers and directions going on here. Stick with me for success. Barber cords are not the easiest to knit off of, but they are really easy to slide off of. So now I have, and if you have a lot of excess between your sleeves, just pull the needles until it hangs like this. And here's what I want to show you. I'm going to flip this back around. Sorry for my noisy needles. Flip this back around. So this is my neck and here's my torso. Remember what I said about one of them feeling folded? This is not quite what my picture looked like. My picture had this one folded, but that's if we try to flatten it out the other way. If I was going to hold these up like I'm knitting them, like in that picture, this guy would be going straight up from the armhole, and this guy's armhole would be flipping in. It's going to look kind of crazy on your sweater. This is another drawing I could have made of right when you start. This sleeve is going to be sticking straight out and this sleeve is going to be folded in. If it looks like this, it's good. You're good. You did it right. Now, the thing that it was almost impossible to show in the drawings is what to do next. So what we want to do is we want to start at the armhole. Over on, when you're wearing it, this will be your left sleeve. So start over at the armhole where we started with our barber cords. Really, if you look at the two different the armpits, I mean, the whole thing's the armhole, right? If you look at the two different armpits, only one of them is by a break in the needles right now. So that is where we want to start picking up stitches here. Now that it's on the needles, we can do this. So what I need to do now, I have this big gap here. Half of the stitches here need to go on needle 1, and half of the picked up stitches here will be picked up by needle 2 when it comes back around. And my instructions say 4 and 4. Now the other thing I mentioned, you can get these guys super close together. The other thing I mentioned, when we're dealing with two circulars, both ends of one, both ends of the other. Try to get them in the camera there. Needle 2, I am just going to ignore for a second. I'm going to find the other end of needle 1, not the one where we're starting, the other end, and that is the one I'm going to use to knit. Only use the same ends of both needles to work. So what that means is to start, I need to get the needle that's close to the spot we're going to start into the stitches there and pick up the other end of the same needle to start working here. And I'll use my first skein of yarn. Now I need to pick up 8 stitches all the way across, but I'm going to start in the middle, which if I'm looking at this correctly, we've got the ribbing actually helps. Starting in the middle is going to be starting right about here. If you need to count in, it needs to be 4 stitches over here and 4 stitches over here, but we need to start in the middle. So I'm going to pick up 1 here, 2 in this space, and 1 over here, but I need to start in the middle. I have different videos on picking up and knitting stitches. For this guy, I find everyone's got their own way to pick up stitches. I find taking my left needle and putting it where the stitch needs to go under at least 2 strands, sometimes 3, but I want to get right in the middle of this stitch. That's my pickup, and then I can come in and knit it. So I'm going to grab my yarn. If I need to, I'm going to hold it to the back of my work so it feels like it's attached. And I'm going to go ahead and knit under all this gobbledygook. And then I take my needle out. I've picked up and knit 1 stitch and it's now on my needle. I'm going to find a spot. Let's see. Here's one. I try to get under 2 stitches and I try to get in the middle of some kind of mess if I can. That's maybe a good place. Picking up stitches is a little bit of an art form. So I'm going to go 2. I'm going to find a 3rd spot in here. I want to go under more than 1 strand, so I'm going to try picking up a 2nd strand here. This might look a little not so nice, but it's the underarm. That's 3. I'm going to pick up my 4th right about here. I am getting under quite a hot mess here. But in the end, if I can cinch up that loose strand, from the front side, it shouldn't look like such a hot mess. Now I'm going to continue knitting in pattern till I get up to the shoulder. I will probably speed this up so that you don't have to watch it. If you want, you can pick up an extra stitch here to try to close the gap. You just need to remember to take it out later. So if I picked up an extra one, there's an example of picking it up without using this needle. I need to remember to keep my stitches consistent next time to knit 2 together right at this gap. So sometimes that depends on what your instructions tell you, and sometimes it's what you want to do. So I'm going to try to keep this in pattern, which means knit 2, purl 2, and I'm also doing my first purl through the back loop. I'm going to go all the way up to the shoulder. I'll see you up there. Okay, I am up to the top of this. I'm done with this sleeve for now. Do you see how that the other half of the sleeve is attached to the other needle? So I'm just going to let it be. I'm also going to let this piece of yarn be. I'm going to try not to get it tangled in the cords. There's ways to fix that if it happens. But I've picked up stitches and I've gone up to the top. Now I'm going to move over to my other sleeve. And it might mean getting it all bunched up on the needle. Be careful, because if they're both bunched up back to back on the needles, you might bust through and keep knitting and not realize it's a second sleeve. I don't want to work this sleeve here with this yarn that's right here, because then my sleeves will be attached and I'll be in a hot mess. It's time, because I'm on a new sleeve, same needle tips, new sleeve. It's time to pull in my other skein of yarn. I'll see if I can keep them both in camera somewhat. I had to tidy up my yarn ball there. But this skein of yarn is for sleeve 1. This skein is for sleeve 2. But now I have to do the same thing I did on the other sleeve. I need to go to the middle and start just off center from the middle and pick up and knit. And remember, if you need to, I like to leave a little bit of a tail because I can use that to hide any ends, any gaps later. I'm going to knit this, pick up and knit this first stitch. It came off, so let's try again. Go into this just left of center and try to pull some yarn back under. And you know what? I split that, so I'm going to try it one more time. It's not a science, it's an art form, and things do not often go perfectly. There's one. Now I want to make sure I'm knitting with the yarn that goes over to this ball. I'm going to pick up my other 3, moving from the center towards my held stitches. Remember, if it's not perfect, it's your underarm. Just don't go flashing people your underarm and you'll be fine. If it's a little thicker there, it's okay. All right, I have my 4 stitches. Now, if I want, I can pick up an extra stitch in here. Again, try to get under more than one strand so it closes gaps, because if you only catch one strand, you might create a new gap. And I am going to knit up the rest of this needle to the shoulder. I'll see you up there. All right, I'm up at the top here. And when I'm done with this side, I'm going to pull the needle. Try not to have the yarn tangled around my needle. Have it just falling off the back side here. I can keep my needle under there if I want. Yarn, yarn. There's 2 yarns, right? I slide the stitches I just knit into the middle of my circular. Here's both ends. It's a really long one, so it's hard to see. But we have 2 sleeves, 2 openings. The yarn is on the far side, the left side of both of these. Now I'm going to turn the whole thing around, my whole garment around, so that the other side is facing me. And what you might notice, I got the sunlight bugging us out a little here. I just did a row of dark stitches on top, and the side facing me is this color for my yoke top. So it has the light color facing me, but we're going to start, and the yarns might get tangled under here. They will untangle later, or you can untangle them. But we're going to start at the end where the yarn is. The yarn is on these 2 ends. There's no needle here, so we have to start up here. So I'm going to take needle 2, get the end of the needle that's closest to the yarn, which is right here, up on the needle. Then I want to take, I know it's over on the other sleeve, try to ignore that. I want to take the same end, the same needle, I should say, the other end of the same needle. Other end of the same needle. And we want it to come under this yarn. Let me get me some slack. It actually, even though it's on this side, it's this yarn. That's a little bit crazy. You don't have to keep moving around your yarn though, because once we knit across this side, they will come back to their proper spot. But I want to get some slack under here for right now. For how I'm filming this, it's kind of hard to keep everything in camera, hopefully, and untangled. So if I started from on top like this, the yarn might wrap around one of these needles. So if we can, we want the yarn to be falling off the back and everything else coming up from underneath. It's really close to the cable from my other needle. That should keep it from being super gappy right there. But these are the 2 ends of the same cable needle. And I'm going to start working in pattern down to the armpit again. and I'll meet you down there to show I still have to pick up stitches. Okay, I'm down at the bottom again. And if we look at it, it's a little wonky right now. But if we look at it, I've got one circular that's knitting across. This is my other circular. Here's where we started. We still have a gap. We don't want to start knitting over here yet. We need to close up this gap of the underarm. So we're going to start where we are and pick up stitches across. This is our first pickup from when we went up. So we have room for 1, 2, 3, and 4. I might pick up an extra one here, but we're going to start next to the stitches this time to fill in the circle. So I'm going to pick up an extra one to try to hide a gap here. And then I'm going to start picking up, it's kind of hard to show. I'm going to start picking up right here, just trying to get under. I might try to get under 3 strands, 2 or 3. We don't want to get super bulky. We also don't want it to pull too much. I have a video on just plain picking up stitches for any situation. I need to get in 2 stitches along here without feeling super crazy about where I'm picking up. I'm kind of mushing in. Picking up under a purl stitch is a little more complicated than picking up in the center of a knit stitch, because this one, again, that's my first one. I have space right here. I can go in the middle of this V. And try to pick up. And it didn't go so cleanly. I think it's because I didn't pick up super cleanly. Here is, I've got 5. There's still going to be some kind of weird gap there that I might sew together later. I don't need a whole lot more slack on this because I'm actually about to move to this needle. But I've picked up so that there is no gap here. We're not going to keep knitting on this one. We have finished. We want to keep going up to this shoulder, but we need to let go of this yarn and start knitting over here with this yarn. So the second sleeve, again, if I kept going and I pulled on this yarn that I was just holding, I would connect my sleeves together. Let me just show you that. Suddenly my sleeves are connected together. That's not what I want. Get this guy back on. We want to pick up the yarn that's waiting for us right here and start knitting down the side from the shoulder to the armpit on our sleeve number 2. These are still completely separate sleeves. They might be hanging out on the same needles, but they are completely separate sleeves. So let's get this down to the bottom, and I'll see you down there for picking up the last part of our stitches. And one thing I'll point out, again, yarn might be a little tangled here. We'll untangle that later. We are pulling from this skein of yarn. If it's going under this cable, that's okay, as long as it's not twisted around extra spots here to make extra stitches. That is something you'll get used to as you work with this. All right, I'm down at the bottom again. And on this one, it might be a little clearer. Here's my other needle and where I started. This is where we started the whole entire round. I need to pick up stitches along here. I don't want to lose track of this side of the needle. I'm still using same tips of same cord on needle. The other one's just hanging out. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to pick up an extra one, but I'm starting with my extra one. I need to start where my yarn is and go in. So I'm going to find a spot here to try to hide any holes. And then again, 1, 2, 3, 4 to go in the opposite direction. So I'm picking up a stitch from a knit column. I'm going to probably kind of fudge something for 2 stitches from the purl columns because they're a little harder to navigate where to pick up. That's just 1 strand. That's not going to be enough. I'm going to go through the middle of this. There's my third. And here's my fourth. So I have the 4 official pickups and 1 extra that I'll knit together on the other side. Now we've closed the gap here. Same thing as the other side. I'm going to pull my needle, pull my stitches so they're on the cable. And now, especially if we try to undo all the crazy gobbledygook, we have 2 tails where we started 2 different skeins of yarn. We have the working yarn, which is on the same side. We've knit across one and then the other. So the working yarn's on the same end. If you ever have working yarn in the same spot, something crazy happened. They should both be at the, instead of in the middle, they should both be at the ends of each sleeve. And that means we want to turn it around. We can keep twisting the same direction. These will keep twisting. There's a chance, instead of twisting this way, if I twist back the other way, you just want to turn it so that the other side is facing us. And my yarn might just get tangled anyway. Yarn tangles are part of knitting, and trying to not get mad at them and see your way through is part of what makes the knitting work and not be as stressful. So I can get these guys closer to each other, but since I turned it around, let me clean this up. I turned it around. Now the yarn is on the right side instead of the left side because I rotated the whole piece. My shorter needle that I just finished knitting with is in back, not facing me. The longer needle is facing me. I want to get the needle tip that is closer to my working yarn into my stitches. And pull out the slack if it bubbles in here. But then I want to get the other end of that same needle, pull it around, and see when we pick up stitches, where we end off is right next to where we're going to start. I'm going to get my needle under or get the yarn over, whichever makes more sense. And I'm going to start knitting in pattern. If you need to, you can tug on this first stitch just a little bit. Try not to overdo it. I'm going to knit in pattern. So that was 1 knit and 2 purls and 1 knit. And this is where I've got an extra stitch. There'd be 3 knits here. I picked up that extra stitch. So I'm going to knit these 2 together to keep my knit 2, purl 2 going. I'll show you one more row if you want to hang out with me to see how we transition again. But I'll speed this part up right now until I get to the shoulder. All right, I'm at my shoulder. This needle is now free from the stitches from sleeve 1, but I can't keep going on sleeve 1. There's a cable there. I need to go where this tip leads me next. If I shove it in, it's going to lead me to the bottom of sleeve 2. I want to let go of the yarn from sleeve 1 and leave it hanging. And find the yarn for sleeve 2. It's not the tail. Tuck the tail in if you need to. Here's the yarn for sleeve 2. And here is where my next stitch is. It's at the very base of the armpit of sleeve 2. Now I'm going to try to knit in pattern, and it may look a little wonky here, but remember, it's the underarm. Here's my 4 stitches. Here's that extra one I added. So I'm going to knit 2 together to try to close up and make that spot not be super huge and gappy. Now let's knit across, let's knit across the stitches of this side of sleeve 2. And I'll see you at the shoulder to see what happens on the way down. All right, I'm up here at the top. Now I'm not going to keep going with this needle. That's all this needle has to do. That's all, right? That's plenty. I've knit this sleeve and this sleeve on 1/2 Now the yarn should be, from these two balls, should be on the left side. I want to flip this all the way around. I'm going to twist it. If I can, I straighten the yarn out, but remember, they may twist under each other. That's okay. When I flip the whole thing 180 degrees, it means the yarn is now over on the back needle on the right side, and the front needle that's facing me, for me, it's the shorter needle. I'm going to get the tip that is next to the yarn into the stitches and then find the other end of the same needle, pull my yarn out, get it going over my needle, or my needle comes up from under. And this needle is now going to knit down from the shoulder, down this side, if I can get my stitches to stay. I'll meet you down at the bottom so I can show you knitting two together again. I'm getting close here to the bottom where my extra stitches were. That's an extra stitch right there, where my picked up stitches were. This one, I either want to knit these two together or I want to do a slip slip knit. I don't want this extra stitch to be on top. So I'm going to come right up to that. I'm going to knit the extra stitch with my first real pickup stitch. It's still going to leave a little bit of a hole. I can take care of that later. It's not going to be perfect. And I'm mostly okay with that. So I'm going to finish my stitches. Suddenly this needle is free of this stitch's sleeves. And it's time to move on to the next sleeve. So I'm going to slide him up. I'm going to drop the yarn from this sleeve and pick up the yarn from the other sleeve that's attached to the other side here. And I'm going to knit down. I'll see you down at the bottom. Right down here at the bottom, the same as the other one, I'm going to knit this one. This is extra. I'm going to knit it together with the first real pickup stitch. And then I'm going to finish my underarm stitches. There's only 3 more. Oop. And I caught something extra there. Splitty yarn happens. And now I'm down at the bottom again. Again, when I hit the bottom of my second sleeve, I move my cable to the center. I've got the yarns are both, even if they get caught, should both be over on the left side. And I've now knit 2 rounds. That was the end of my second round of both. I went up and down and down. Whew. So that was the craziness of setting up 2 sleeves at a time on 2 circulars. I have my sleeves here. If I try to hold it up, they look like they're going off. One's folded, one's not. And you have to knit up and down on both before you're done. Once you get the hang of this, it really is wonderful. And your sleeves get done at the same time and the decreases are in the same spot. And it's a wonderful feeling. Like I said, this one I did that way. Really enjoyed it. If you find it's really too complicated, I can only help so much through YouTube, right? I can try to answer questions below. If you find it's too complicated, 1 sleeve at a time is fine. Like not having to deal with 2 separate skeins of yarn, that's okay. This for some people, this is awesome. For some people, they say, nope, not for me. That's totally okay. It takes some time. Be patient with yourself. I always say, and I'll say it again at the end, I hope that your crafting is filled with joy and confidence. And the point of these videos is to try to help you with that confidence. Not everything will go perfectly or smoothly. Do the best you can. That's okay. So if you haven't subscribed yet, consider subscribing to this channel. We just hit 2,000 subscribers. I'm filming this towards the end of March in 2022. We just hit 2,000 subscribers, which is super exciting. Very, very exciting. If you want to check out our other channel that Sun Dragon has, it's the Sun Dragon Sideshow. It's where Liz and I are talking about all the projects. My assistant Liz at the shop and I are talking about all the projects we're working on. That can be really fun too. It's a different feel than this channel, but it's fun. If you want to support the work that we do in the Sun Dragon universe, the work that we do here and at the Sun Dragon Sideshow and on social media and at the shop, we have a Patreon account. The cool thing about that is you can do a monthly subscription, and most levels get some level of swag after 3 months for signing up. So patreon.com/sundragon. I am also working to set up memberships here that are going to be different than subscription. A membership will include a monthly fee. I'm going to try to keep them manageable. I haven't picked the levels yet, but I'm thinking like $5, $10 or $15, and something like $25 a month for different levels. Anything at the second or third level will get you copies of the whiteboards that I make. You'll have access to those. I will make them either JPEGs or PDFs that you can have access to. The lowest level, the $5, will be getting your name in the credits as a patron, because we appreciate everybody gets their names as a patron if they contribute some money to help us, to help alleviate the work that we do, help make it possible. We appreciate everybody. Whether or not a financial donation is possible, we still appreciate you very much. Thank you for watching. I will try to get an announcement, not necessarily a video, but an announcement on my page when I figure out the membership thing. But what's more important is I really do wish that your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hello, baby. You okay when I was filming? Yeah. It took a while, didn't it? You just finally got fed. Oh, that's a good kitty.